clinician. I'm still a clinician. I still call myself a clinician. I still see clients, not as much as I'd like to. I'm a de facto entrepreneur. I worked for an agency that did great clinical work. We went into people's homes. We did it on purpose, too. And we went into the homes of people who were disadvantaged, who've been abused, neglected, kids who have been prostituted and horribly maltreated, and adults with serious and persistent mental illness, substance abuse. And we did great clinical work and loved the work we did. And we worked for an agency that had some administrative problems, like we knew it had problems because like, our paychecks would be no good. Well, sometimes they'd be good and other times they wouldn't be so good. And we'd get paid and we'd get checks and we'd run to the bank the check was drawn on and get cash. And I remember being in line and sort of triaging who really needs to get paid this week. And someone would say, well, I got a mortgage now, go ahead, front of the line. So we decided, let's do this ourselves so we could at least do this well. And looked around and said, well, how could we start this? Because we'd have to pay payroll every 2 weeks. And so I took a second mortgage on my home and finally tipped off my probably 5th pay period on MasterCard. And that was about it. And if I had needed to make a 6th pay period, I wouldn't have made it. But by the 6th week, revenue started to come in. We built primarily Medicaid. So Medicaid, finally, the check from Medicaid came. I said, oh, thank you. People have been agreed to not cash their check this week, just in case. So I got to be an entrepreneur just because it sort of had to be done. What I believe is that we're constantly presented with challenges, with a mission, with a task that's ours. And if we take that task on, I think we become entrepreneurs. The good part about that is I don't believe any task will be put in front of you that you're not capable of addressing, and that the resources will be found. And in my experience, that's largely true. I think to be a successful entrepreneur, you really have to have a heart for it. You have to have an unshakable sense of purpose. And that sense of mission is really what drives the entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs are not out to make money or create empires. They're out for purpose. Bill Gates is an entrepreneur, and he was totally interested in people having computers in their own room. Prior to Bill Gates, computer was 3 buildings over. This was IBM and Digital Equipment Corporation, and nobody had their own little computer. You had to go down to the computer room. I remember being at Florida State and going down with my deck of cards and giving these cards to the guy at the window and the computer, and it was huge. And mysterious things happened. Bill Gates wanted that to be different, wanted everyone to be able to use their own computer. That's what drove him, and that's why he's the most wealthy man in America. So it has to start with a mission, and there are perhaps lots of things that you have a mission for and a passion for, and what your focus has to be within that passion. Not to say that it has to be your highest passion. Sometimes you'll have wonderful passions for things that other people don't much care about, frankly. I still have passions for things that I think I've been called to do that nobody else seems to care about. I want to reduce truancy in schools. Nobody cares about truancy in schools. The schools sure don't. I guess they just assume these kids didn't show up. The only people I've gotten any interest in truancy from schools is downtown merchants that don't want these kids hanging around. I'm passionate about teen fathers taking responsibility and being fathers, and nobody else seems to have much interest in that at all. People that I think should, like correctional facilities and juvenile justice. They got bigger things to do. So there's a lot of things that you can be passionate about that there's nobody else that passionate about. Move on, get passionate about something else. There are a lot of people who have been very passionate about things that other people weren't passionate about. And I would tell you their names, but nobody remembers them. So the other thing is you need smarts. You need to have an understanding. I am so grateful for the good background I got in counseling and in working with clients that has been able to inform me in developing the agency. But it's also, you have to be smart about being able to manage details and develop systems and processes that can be replicated. Entrepreneurs get something and it's like a cookie cutter. Once we got it, we boom, 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 stamp it out. And I started one small little mental health center and thought, oh, this will be good. This is all I can manage. And 25 years later, we have 23 of them in 3 states. In order to scale things up, you have to have processes and you have to be willing to have systems of accountability. You have to really understand and value reliability and replicability. Is that a word? Yeah. Okay. So when I talk about smarts, it's not really about IQ. It's a little bit about what Goldman called emotional IQ, but it has to do with having a combination of book smarts, street smarts, people smarts, and creative smarts. A third thing you need as an entrepreneur is guts. You have to have the ability to take action when things go wrong. There were a lot of people, there were 12 of us that worked at this mental health center, and I was the one that was willing to mortgage my house, go into debt, and you have to have the guts to do it. In order to make something work, you have to scale it, and when you scale it, it gets bigger. You have to be willing to tough it out. Don't confuse guts with thrill-seeking, because it's not the same thing. And if you're successful, you have to have the guts to change, because they say success is the enemy of change. As long as you're really successful at something, you're going to be less likely to change it. And in order to adapt to new market opportunities, you have to be willing to adapt. You have to be willing to change. The last thing you need is luck. I do believe that I have had great fortune and blessing, but I think I mean more than luck in the traditional sense of it, that we have to take the opportunities that are provided for us. An example, Zoe Timms is the woman who runs a program that's called Women's Educational Project, and she had a friend who was in business. She had her friend introduce her to her friend, and she talked to him about women's education in India. And at the end of the conversation, he decided to go out and meet the board. He did meet the board, he did his due diligence, and then gave them $500,000. People said, wow, she was so lucky. Well, the reality is she met about 4 or 5 people like that a week. Not all of them paid off. She kept at it. Luck was there, but she took the opportunity to pursue that. She had then taken this guy and had him introduce her to some of his business associates, and she is working that network for all it's worth, and they are delivering on educational problems to women in India, which is, I think, the world's biggest problem. She stuck at it. She kept at it and wouldn't be dissuaded. The underlying traits of luck are humility. In order to take the opportunities that luck gives us, you have to have enough sense of humility that it gives you the capacity to explore, to think that you don't know it all, so that when things come along, then there are opportunities. We talked about early work history. One of my early work histories is I worked at a factory, and I was a college kid that worked at the factory. There were a bunch of us who work at a factory, and they did the summer rush and filled in for vacations, and they went on strike. So I thought, I'm not part of the union. I'm not on strike. I'm going to work. So I went to work, and there was the pickup line, and I was saying hello to my friends, and then I started to proceed through, and they said, where are you going? And I said, well, I'm not part of the union. And they said, well, you can't get on. I said, well, yeah, I'm supposed to work today, and I need the money for for tuition. And they said, well, you can't go. And I said, but I'm a college student. I'm in college. Thinking that status really protected me. Well, they beat the snot out of me. What a good experience that would have been. It gave me a sense of humility. It gave me the sense that, yeah, I'm a college student, but these guys are supporting their wives, their families. This is their life. This job is the job they're going to retire from. And they take this really seriously, and I didn't. And that gave me a sense of humility. And that's hugely important when it comes to luck, because you have to know that, this doesn't revolve around you. You have to have an intellectual curiosity is an important part of luck, and incredible optimism. Without optimism, luck just seems like a challenge, but with optimism, luck is a great opportunity. Did I go on too long? Okay. Joe?
Well, I first off, I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I feel honored to be able to share some things with you. FSU, the counseling psych program at FSU is, to me, a very unique program and was a life-changing program for me. There's some opportunities in the program here that are a little bit different than many programs in that there's a focus on educational psychology, there's a focus on career development, and there's a focus on counseling psychology. And all of those fit in two basic ideas that I developed while I was here, both of which came from Dr. Peterson. The first one was that instead of looking for a job, develop a career portfolio. Look at all of the talents, abilities, experience that you have and develop a career portfolio. And then Dr. Peterson always used the example, he said it's like a farmer who has a certain number of acres and has to decide each year what he's going to plant on those acres in order to be profitable. And that has been the story of my career path. It's looking at all of the different things that I can do. Now, that's a little bit different than many people advise as far as going into a private practice. They say, find what you're good at, find a need, and find your niche. Find that one place where you fit in. And we have taken a different course in that and said, find out what all the needs are, find out how to meet all those needs, and keep going for everything you can. The second idea also came from Dr. Peterson, but he turned me on to an article by John Crumbles that was on serendipity and career path satisfaction or job satisfaction or something like that. And those two ideas have driven the development of our practice. Trying to figure out what all we have and then seeing how things work together to just make it develop. When I started a practice, I had this idea. I was going to have sort of a boutique practice, those practice, where we fee for service, no insurances, you come in, you pay me. We had, we set out, the tray of all these fancy cookies and, all these nice little things that make it nice for the upper people to come in. And I was seeing some judges and wealthy people, a few of them. And someone said to me, boy, my friend would like to see you, but they can't afford to pay the fee. They have insurance. Do you take this insurance? And so I said to my assistant, find out what we need to do to get on that panel. We'll go ahead and do it for them. And it began to develop like that. Everything just began to fit together. Someone said, do you do disability evaluations? And so I said to my practice manager, find out what you do to do those. And then we started doing those, and someone said, do you do anything for vocational rehabilitation? So I said to my practice manager, find out who vocational rehabilitation is and what they need. And we just kept letting that develop. Now, I am an entrepreneur. My goal in it was not just to have a practice, but to build something. I have many years of working in hospitals and prisons and so on, and there always seemed to be this limitation that the system wouldn't allow. And I said, I want to build something where people feel like they can do what they know how to do and do it to the best of their ability without the limitations of a large organization. And so we began to hire people. And my philosophy in bringing people on was, if I find the right person, then I'll create the job for them. So we had this young lady who wanted to come to a postdoc who was a clinical child psychologist. And I said, well, I don't do a lot with children, so we'll have to develop that for you. And now we draw children from 2 hours away. The Peds Center sent them to us. The same thing has continued to happen. I have a friend who is the regional director for vocational rehabilitation, and she said, I'm retiring at the end of this year, and I want to come work for you and do something interesting. I'll have a good income, but I want to do something that I want to do. So we sat down at lunch, and I said, what do you want to do? And she said, I don't know. And I said, tell me what you like. She said, well, she started throwing out some things. She said, I like working with veterans. I've done that with the VR before. And I said, well, let's set up a meeting with the state director for vocational rehabilitation and talk to him. So we had a lunch, and he wants to develop a pilot program of working with vocational rehabilitation and the Veterans Administration in a joint project to provide jobs for the returning veterans that are coming back. I had no thoughts of that. I'm a veteran, and when she said that, I said, well, I'm a veteran, I can do that. I can relate there. And what I've tried to do is first off, figure out what I know and what I can do. But in order to be an entrepreneur, you also have to know what you can't do. And you got to find somebody else to come in and help you do that. And that has been the thing that has made the most difference for me. We have 3 psychologists, 2 postdocs who are just finishing their postdoc and will be staying on. We're looking for another postdoc. I'm trying to recruit while I'm out here today with Dr. Peterson, because we have room for 2 more people with the amount of practice we have. We have a psychiatrist, we have a psychiatric PA, we have a speech therapist. All of these people, just one by one. We have 2 practicum students, we have 4 psychometrists. None of which did we develop a plan to say, now we need this person. But people would come to us and say, I'm looking for a job, and they were the right people. And so we would say, okay, how do we fit them in? How do we develop a job that will work around them? I believe that to be an entrepreneur, and I separate in my mind the difference between a successful practice and being an entrepreneur. There are many successful practices where people make a good living and they see people on a regular basis, but they're primarily a clinician who has to deal with business as a part of being a clinician. I see a little bit different from my perspective as an entrepreneur. It's like I'm a clinician, and I love doing that. My greatest regret in life is that I only have one. If I had more, there's so many things I'd like to do. I mean, I'd want to grow up to be like Dr. Peterson if I had another life to live, and live his life. There's so many things I want to do that I have developed the opportunity to do what I like to do and to do it as I want to. Oftentimes I'm asked what we specialize in, and I have no answer for that because we do everything. We do evaluations, we do psychologicals, we do vocational evaluations. They said, vocational evaluation through vocational rehabilitation paid very well. And I said, well, what do you need to do that? They said, you have to be certified. Well, how do you get certified? You have to have some expertise. I said, I have expertise. My dissertation was on careers. How much more do you want? And so I did the things to do those. We do neuropsych. I decided that's a field that they needed something in, so I sought out with Dr. Seaton and then with the psychologist Albany, and started developing the skills for that. We do forensic evaluations. We do evaluations for bariatric surgery. Someone called and said, "Do you do evaluation for bariatric surgery?" And so my office first came to me and asked that, and I said, "Tell them yes, but delay the appointment. Give me time to learn what I'm doing." Turns out there's an association of evaluators for bariatric surgery, and they will give you resources and guidance in doing the evaluation. So I have tried to just develop everything I could with evaluations. We do more evaluations. We do disability evaluations. We do everything we can on that. I teach at Thomas University sometimes. I go into businesses and do workshops on conflict management, that type of thing. I'm a consultant for Social Security Disability, reading other people's evaluations. We do everything. And we do that, I guess, because maybe I'm ADHD, but I can't stay focused on one thing. I just like to do so many things in life, and we try to do that. How what we do has fit in with the questions that Dr. Sampson posed. We tried to take a long view of building the practice and saying the first thing is meet the needs of the client. If we can meet their needs, then we will build a practice. If we're after the money, now I think you have to be motivated by money to be an entrepreneur. Either absolutely or symbolically, you've got to be motivated by money. I'm not, money itself doesn't mean a whole lot to me. Now, I do like to drive the car that I want to drive, and I do like to go where I want to go. But having more money doesn't mean anything. But I can tell you exactly how much we brought in last year because it is a measure of how we're doing. And I can tell you that we're the largest single practice in the state of Georgia as far as revenue generated because money motivates me because it's a marker of how well we're doing in building this thing. And, we though said in order to make the money, we've got to take a long view and we've got to meet the needs of the client. That's, the idea, there are many people who work in our field and do fee-for-service, no insurances. If you live in a larger city, you can do that very easily, and you don't have the hassle of anything. But there's a whole segment of the population you can't deal with. You can't help those people. So we got on every insurance panel we could. We do pro bono work. We have some agreements. There's a large Mennonite community above us. We do consultations and counseling for them on a reduced rate. There's a Native American Indian. They say they like that better than Native American group up in just west of us. We do work for them for free. I work for the Halcyon Home, both doing training and doing counseling for free. But everything I do, I have this idea that it always comes back to you. If I do something for free, it's going to come back to me somewhere. And so I'm always thinking, we deal with some difficult people, and I'm always thinking in terms of they're coming here because they're difficult people and nobody else will talk to them. So I tell the office staff, when that person's yelling at you, remember they pay your mortgage. And look at them from that perspective, that they're the ones that pay your mortgage every month. And so that we have tried to say that our main role is meeting the needs of the clients, that's what we do. And whatever it takes, we do, sometimes they come in and they want a psychoeducational evaluation. Insurances won't pay for a psychoeducational evaluation because it's not a medical issue. So we sometimes will cut the rates to almost nothing if we feel like they need it. They have to have it. We will add tests. When you're building as in a private practice, many of the things you do are time related. Some of the things like testing though is based on you actually have to say these are the tests we want to give, and they will approve what tests they feel like you can give. And they'll pay you only for doing those tests. And sometimes it's not the test we need, and I say just throw it in anyway. Because there's this idea that if we do what's right by the clients, that somehow that's going to come back and help us. Secondly, we're always exploring to see what the community needs. I don't meet anyone without thinking in terms of, I wonder how we can help each other here. I wonder what they need that will fit into what I need as well. And constantly, I have 100 plans going on all the time. 100 different things that we can do. We're thinking about opening a practice in Atlanta. Some opportunities have afforded themselves. Maybe we will, maybe we won't, but I've got 100 plans going on. Somebody will talk with me, they'll ask me to do something, and I'll say, let's think about that. And so that we're constantly seeing how we can meet the needs of the community. When I talk to people that refer to us, there are always three basic questions I have. How can we help you meet the needs that you have? And the second question is, how are we doing at that? Give us your feedback. We're experts on what we're doing, but we don't know what you want to know from this. So help us to understand that. And then thirdly, how can I do it any better? What can I improve on in this to make it better for you? As far as personally, I think that what I've done has given me the opportunity to continue to learn. I'm constantly thinking of new ideas and new areas we can go into. I'm exploring different ideas, what might be interesting to do. And then I try to think, how can you make a living doing that, and just fit all those things together. So that's been our perspective on it. That's been what has moved us on it. That we have tried to find out what all the needs are and see. I think that I'm competent as a psychologist, but there are a whole lot of competent psychologists out there, and I want to make a little more than that, and I want to do a few more things than that. So I have to gather around me people who have expertise in areas that I don't know. And I've got to keep them motivated with the dream that we have. And if I can do that and meet the needs of the client and the community, I just keep growing and experiencing and loving every moment of it.
Do you have some energy for a little more? Okay. Jim's question is very interesting to me because there are three different ways I look at responding for your purposes to that. One is as it relates to clients, and in our case I'm going to be specific as it relates to universities. The second as it relates to candidates in searches, and the third as it relates to building the firm. I'm going to be briefer on the first two and longer on the third. As it relates to clients, we try to instill a sense of entrepreneurism in everything they're doing. We bring best practices to them. Some of our clients have brought us in to then hold workshops with faculty and administrators on how to do searches. There's way too much search work out there for us to do it all, so this is giving away, in some cases, somewhat trade secrets. But we do that, and we reap the benefits of that. We also have started a specialty within our firm of leadership development and executive coaching, and one research university did a pilot this year with us, and now they're rolling it out for the whole university. So this is again investing in the human resource, human development capacity of people rather than coming in when they're in trouble and trying to remedy it. With candidates, I think that one of the things that we try to help candidates understand, in addition to what I was describing earlier about PAR and about leadership and vision and management resource development, is do something to distinguish yourself. Just because you're a new PhD, there are a lot of others. What have you done that distinguishes you from all the others? So for me, that meant writing an article and having it in press before I graduated, having worked, having done a turnaround in residence hall before I graduated. Little did I realize that turnaround would follow me through the rest of my life. So those are things that we try to help candidates with, trying to help them. Candidates will come with great substance or without. If they don't have it, they got to go get it. They'll come with interview and resume preparation skills or not. If they don't have it, we can quickly get it. So trying to help them round out the way they present themselves and what they've done. Now, in terms of the firm, we have built the firm in a very unusual way. And we started our company with $10,000. So when you start to think about, oh, well, what's a business plan? I've never done a business plan. I've got to have $200,000 to start a company or whatever. Not so. When you start to think about the journey that my colleagues have been on, where you've got to meet payroll and everything, one nice thing about executive search is it costs about 10% to run our entire company. That's an incredible margin as you think about it. And so that means that we're not having to put money out to get money in. We're getting money in to then put it out. Because when you sign a contract for executive search, the first payment is due before the work starts. So the way that the industry is structured, you don't have to have a line of credit, you don't have to have cash flow, you just do it, and it immediately runs itself. But as we put that together, the entrepreneurism in that has been to develop a pathway system for employees who have to pay their mortgages and to allow them to tailor their own life needs to their work. So that may sound kind of quirky to you, but actually it works quite well. So there's different roles in the firm. One is called, in our work, is called Rainmaker. It means you're going out and getting business and bringing it in. Another is called Consultant. It means you're actually doing the business, you're recruiting. Another is Admin. You may be doing some research, for example, on a particular market. And the other, of course, is the partnership role, where you're in a lead position on searches. You're basically doing client management. So instead of like other search firms where an employee has to choose this path or that, our employees can float in and out of paths. So if they want to bring business to the firm for this search, but not for this one, they may be a consultant for one and a client manager for another. If it's a year they want to put a new roof on their house, they might decide they want to do more searches rather than less. So the formula for payment has to do with the amount of work they choose to do. That being said, most of the consultants will do about 20 searches a year. And in the industry, for example, a consultant, their base pay, this is an industry that pays a low base and a huge bonus based on productivity. So for a person who was a consultant, not a client manager, the fee in the industry would be they would be salaried at about $65,000 to $100,000 a year, and then for each search they did, they would get a big bonus on top of that. But in our work, that person would make $10,000 a search per year. So if they're doing 20 searches, they're already starting at the $200,000 mark. So as you think about it, a person can say, well, to use an example, this consultant had an illness with her mother who lives with her, needed to work less and work in a different mode but make equal money or more. We were able to accommodate that. This consultant loved searches, wanted to become a rainmaker. We were able to accommodate that. So we've allowed that fluidity based on the individual entrepreneurism and individual needs and lifestyle choices of the various people in the firm. One consultant cannot travel. She has a young child at home. She's committed to being at home with that child. She has an office in the home. So she works in that model. Another consultant loves to travel. So she's on the road almost as much as I am. I'm on the road 5 and 6 days a week. So again, they can pick and choose, and they can become their own entrepreneurs. So each person is like running their own business within a business. But there's the flexibility. As long as there's quality, there's the flexibility to accommodate that need. So as you think about it, the spirit of entrepreneurism can take you through everything you do in life. The time you know it's time to leave and change is when you're not learning something new every day. If you find yourself stagnating, if you can't reinvigorate yourself in that career, it's time to move on. Because as long as you're not learning anything new on a particular day, something's not right. So I can honestly say to you that one of the things I reflect on each day is, what have I learned today that's new? What have the candidates, the clients, the industry given to me that I would not have known without them? So learning something new every day is really important. So I'm going to stop with that and turn it back to our fearless leader.
Thank you very much. So we've got just about a half hour for questions of our panelists. And I'd really like you to think about your own vision that you have had for what you were going to do when you leave us. And think about what you've heard, and think about questions that will help move you forward in your own thinking about what you might do. The goal here is to broaden your vision of what you see yourself capable of doing. So think in terms of questions, think about possibilities for yourselves in your future. And you've got 3 great entrepreneurs to ask questions of for the next half hour.
Last question?
Yes, because you're still a learner.
Yes, I am. I might have a future. Is for any of you is risk-taking a part of your personality? And is that like asked you would not do? And then how much is, well, that's another right there.
I'll just pass it on. That's a fascinating question. I learned early on that risk-taking was not risk-taking, it was normal behavior.
How early on did you?
5.
Okay.
So I grew up with that sense that you're only going to grow in risk-taking, but that doing something new, which is taking risks, is part of human nature and part of what you do every day. So I'm remembering as early as when I was 5 and my 5-year-old male cousin used to beat me up and my mother said, well, go hit him back. Not necessarily the right answer, but I did and he never hit me again. So we've had this constant career competitiveness forever ever since that point. But risk-taking is very important with our candidates. We see many of them either too scared to take a risk to try something new, or too overly inflated with their own ego that they're not seeing what it means. So we see a lot of both ends of that continuum. And we try to work with them on both ends through questions for them to reflect on and ways to approach things.
I don't really think of them as risks. Something will present it to me that this has to get done, and I assume, well, of course, this will work out. Amazingly, it usually does. I mean, not that I haven't had a couple of failures down there, but it just seems like this is just the work that needs to get done, and somebody to just figure out a way to do it. And at times, when things haven't worked out exactly as I thought, something else came along. So I guess I'm really not focused on the downside of the risk.
And you want optimism.
I guess. Or stupidity. It's a big advantage.
I think in terms of risk tolerance quite often when I'm talking with people, because there is a different level of comfort that we have with risk. My risk tolerance is very high. You know, if I lose everything, I lost it. You know, you start over again. Other people don't have that. If you have a low tolerance for risk and you go into something that's entrepreneurial, you may not be very happy. Okay? If you have a high tolerance for risk and you take a job working for a hospital or a clinic, you may not be happy. Do you understand what I mean? And that understanding our tolerance of risk, that I see it as neither good nor bad, but that it's one of the things that makes us different, and that you need a certain level to go out on your own in practice. It's a whole lot easier to go to work 5 days a week and know that at the end of that week you know what your paycheck will be, and it'll be the same thing every week, and if you don't have a lot of work, you still get the same thing, than it is to go out and say, if I see someone, I'll make some money. And so that risk tolerance is pretty important. When I talk to people about coming to work with me, I always look. I don't ask them, but I'm looking at their risk tolerance because I want a certain level, but not too much. Dr. Peterson used to always say, make sure when you hire somebody, you're hiring a worker, not a competitor. And so I don't want them to have too high a risk. I don't want them to want to go off and spin off on their own, but I don't want them to be afraid. Now my risk tolerance, and actually I don't do a non-compete when people work for me. A lot of companies do that, but I don't do it because first off, it doesn't hold up in court usually. But secondly, I always say to them, if you want to go out on your own, you go with my blessing. If you're willing to work as hard as I am, then you take the business from me. But I don't think you can do it, you see, because I have a very, very high tolerance of risk. That you know, if I lose it all, I lose it all. And when you start out, you know, people were talking about those paydays. Those become very important. You know, in the first months, or maybe even the first year when we started the practice, I could tell you what came in the mail every single day as far as a check. And I kept adding that up in my head. And that the point when we made payroll, I sat back and relaxed. Because every week, I didn't know if we were going to have payroll or not. You know, there's nothing guaranteeing it. And so it takes a level of a risk tolerance in order to do something like that. And that if you understand your own risk tolerance, you know whether to get a job at the hospital or whether to go out and start your own practice.
We see this in our business the most with faculty who are tenured, moving to administration, and they may have to give up tenure and rank. And that is a huge deal, because they've earned it. They don't want to give it up. But not every place will give it to them if they've already had it.
I guess there's areas that I just don't compromise on risk. When it comes to client care, I don't take risks there. I don't allow anyone to take risks there.
No.
There's certain areas of business that I don't take risks. When I started my first payroll, I had a payroll company take everyone's withholding tax and keep it over there. So when it came time to do my quarterly returns, I would make sure that I had that. But all the rest is pretty much up for grabs.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
I do have a question. Ultimately, I would like to have my own organization that works with teen parents, both the mothers and the fathers and the families. I'm really excited about the experiences that I've gained through work, but my question would be, what advice do you have on the time that I have here as a student and my colleagues here have as a student? You know, things to get involved with, experiences that you had that just made a huge difference in your career path. Do you have those instances that you could share that happened here at school? Or advice that you would have for me as a student?
Well, for me, it was working. And it was enlarging my experiences through working. That also included some team teaching. It also included some scholarship so that publishing could occur. So being able to be integrative in my approach with all the various areas. I couldn't have done the scholarship, the article I ended up doing, without working to have the understanding of the residence halls. So one fed into the other.
So it's that research.
So that was very important.
My greatest mentors have been my clients. If you want to work with teen parents, get out there and meet some teen parents, start working with them, and they will charge you. They will charge you in terms of energy, and they will charge you in the sense that they will set you the mission that has to be done. And those will be people that, and I remember clients that I worked with. We first opened an early intervention program, which is kids birth to 3, and one of the first moms I went out to see was a 17-year-old mom, and she had a baby that had open heart surgery. And the physical therapist couldn't make it, so she said, well, you go out and here, use this tube of ointment on the scar. Right. This heart was horrible. And mom was afraid to touch the baby. And it was my job to show her how to do that. And I was in it, and I realized that she was afraid to touch her baby. And the real scar I was treating was her, not the baby. That she felt guilty for having had a baby, guilty for having a baby with a heart problem, and guilty that she didn't know how to touch her baby. And just to be there and be with her was my privilege to somehow listen to her and be non-judgmental and validate her. And I'm hooked. I'm definitely not going to work with families and teen parents. So get hold of those experiences, and they will keep you going.
I don't know that I can answer your question specifically, because you have a specific goal that you want to attain, and I'm sure that the idea of that is give as many experiences as you can of that. 2 things I would say with that is that the concept of developing your career portfolio means you get as many experiences as you can in life, and you put them all in there, and then you pull out what you need in case things don't always work out the way you want. there are some psychologists who went to school in this program here and live in Tallahassee and have practices in Thomasville. And that two of them opened their practice in Thomasville because Medicaid in Georgia paid better than Medicaid in Florida. So they built their practice on Medicaid, and they were seeing children. That's all they saw. Until they privatized Medicaid in Georgia. And then all of a sudden their business, I mean, everything was pulled out from under them, and they had to start all over and say, what are we going to do now? And now we have biofeedback and all these other things going on that weren't going on before, because they had to change where they thought they were going with it. And so that you know, I think in terms of every experience that I have somehow goes into that portfolio. That you know, there are things that I did. I worked for the Multidisciplinary Center and for what's now ALEC while I was here, and I did that not because I had a great love for doing evaluations, but because it would pay my out-of-state tuition if I did it, and that's the only reason I did it, and I endured it, and it was the greatest experience of my life. I left here knowing more about evaluation than many psychologists who have been in the field for a long time. Those experiences all fit together to develop something that I had never anticipated. So that I think as you're pursuing the experiences that lead directly into what you want to do, keep a place in your mind open to the idea that there are other experiences that if you add those in there, they may come back. Career development, that may come back as an important part of working with parents in some way that you were not anticipating. You know.
I have a selfish question. It's also related to the mortgage. I'm a first-year assistant professor. So when I look into to your presentations, I think, how can I steal the great ideas from all these three experts? So my question is, if you were in my position as a first-year assistant professor here, how would you nurture and foster the entrepreneurship for your students when they are in the program?
Having been in that role and understanding that paying a mortgage was very difficult. Teaching at Rutgers, I had to drive an hour and a half one way to be in a house I could afford to live in. You know, I remember those days very vividly. But when you're working, I think as an assistant professor, you have a very special connection to the students, not just the fact, with all due respect to our more senior faculty, you're closer to their experience in life in terms of how they will see you, and you may have fresher memories of the pain they went through, you went through, they're going through. So that, I think, brings a special set of qualities to the table and freshness to those qualities. In terms of building in the entrepreneurship into your academic work, one can feed on the other. When you design work processes that involve teams of students, that involve going out into the real world, not that the universities aren't the real world, but going out beyond that with the teen parents and others, that will take on a life of its own. That will spur other entrepreneurial activities and ideas. But the more you make the education for them real as to what their hopes and dreams are, I think the more that will spread like kudzu, and you'll find you've got a real entrepreneurial culture being developed.
I'm not sure that I have much to offer on that.
Yeah.
Are you asking more for yourself, or inculcating that in the students?
I'm asking for how may I do in terms of my teaching, helping the students for nurturing and fostering their entrepreneurship.
Oh, I can give another example that'll help them. I'll help you out a bit more with that. One of the things that we did is to elaborate a bit more on the structure of the doctoral students working with the masters, working with the undergraduates, is in the counseling practicum, which I was also in charge of, as well as the group process series. We would have, each student was able to create, within certain bounds, at certain quality dimensions, a sense of the entrepreneurial spirit as they did their supervision and work. So they had their checklist of what they had to do. but they were given certain bounds of freedom within their assignment to be able to experiment, be able to bring new activities to the front, and be able to approach their group work with the students they were supervising in different ways. And while it never sacrificed on quality, actually it enhanced quality, it allowed each of them to look at new and creative ways to do what was on that checklist that they had to do. So that's another way to do it.
Thank you.
I would maybe add to that just an example. Dr. Peterson used to teach a class, organizational development. What was the class? Is that
Consultation and organizational development.
Consultation and organizational development. And are y'all familiar with ALEC, the Adult Learning and Evaluation Center? It hasn't always been in the College of Education. Do you know that? It hasn't always been a part of the College of Education. It was in Dr. Peterson's class. We had to do a project working with an organization, and I was doing a practicum at the Adult Learning Center. At that time, it was in another department that had nothing to do with psychological evaluations. It was led by a master's level person who did not do evaluations, and had a psychologist who came in once a week to consult. And I configured an idea and said it ought to be in College of Education with the resources there and so on and so forth. And that became the seed for why ALEC is over here. But I think to me that was sort of a neat experience, you know, to be able to play a small part in developing something that, you know, had I been out there, I would have made some money on it. You know?
Got one more.
Sure.
I'm gonna give you actually a couple more because your question is so important to these students and to you, I can tell. One of the things that I did at Cincinnati was in designing the group curriculum. I designed it in a way that it went from intro to group to small group, large group, intergroup, to group consultation, to group therapy. And students from psychiatry, business, OBOD, psychology, psychiatric nursing, counseling, education, all could take part in it. So in each of those courses, there were opportunities to do applied work. So for example, in the consultation project, we took them on an automobile dealership of all things. They wanted to change their ranking in the region to become #1 in the region. So the students in that course and I went in and totally redesigned the business. And they had a 3-year window to gain that in. They met that window in 1 year. So the students out of that, they were behaving as entrepreneurs based on knowledge from OBOD and group process and consultation, and being able to apply and integrate all of it. And then that led to articles. But then if their education was also enriched by having students involved from other curriculum.
Just let me add one small point is, I would wish that students understood more about how systems work. Students graduate, they don't know the difference between Medicaid and Medicare. They don't understand the Accountable Care Act. They don't understand healthcare reform. They don't understand how protective services work in states for children who are abused and neglected. And gee, I wish they knew more about that. I wish I knew more about that. Because learning it on the fly is a little difficult.
I'm teaching a course this fall. The students are involved in writing a grant proposal, and one of the things that often contributes to successful entrepreneurs are seeking grants, outside money. Just quick tips that you would give to students who would have a passion about a group, whether it's teen parents or homeless or older workers. If they want to write a grant to secure funds to create a program, what's been your experience about seeking outside money and being successful at that?
Well, we'll all do it. Janet, this also ties into the previous question. At Rutgers, Rutgers is a very unusual university. It's right there at the doorstep to Manhattan. It's there where all the publishers are and the funding agencies, not the feds, but the others. And so faculty at Rutgers were one person unto themselves. Administrators, you take care of business, leave us the heck alone, because these book publishers are walking our halls and putting deals in front of us all the time. That led to the opportunity to do a grant to redesign K through 12. So we were able, with the students and myself and the school teachers and the administrators, to redesign a part of South Plainfield Public Schools into a very revolutionary concept at that point. But when you don't have the advantage of people coming to you and saying, do you want money, the thing that we're seeing in my field most often now, because most of the people we're dealing with are getting federal money, which is tough to get, is they're working it almost as if they were working the legislature for funding. They go and they meet with people. They use the strategy of, what are you interested in funding these days? What are the things that are on your mind? And then they'll go back and have back and forth conversations with the person. So by the time the grant proposal ends up on their desk, the person has already bought into it. So we're seeing a lot of strategy involved in getting grants these days for what people are doing. That also requires entrepreneurism. And it requires the ability to determine a case, then craft the case, make the case, sell the deal, and close it.
Well, just to piggyback on that, I always want to know what is it that the payer wants. And I tend to go after very few grants. Grants, from my perspective, are not renewable. So I have a hard time putting a work unit into place for something that's going to run out in a year or two. I'm much more likely to go to a managed care company that does Medicaid and know what they want and pitch them a deal that is going to be so good, they're going to jump at it. I worked with a large managed care company in Massachusetts that the mandate from their payer was to reduce hospital readmissions. So I said, I know I can do this. If you let me go into the hospital while people are admitted there and start to talk to them about aftercare the first day they get there. Because the way aftercare usually works is the hospital is really rushed and you're there on your last day, you have your bag packed, you're sitting on the bed, and they come in and give you a card, which by the time you're in the parking lot, you've lost. So I want to go in there and meet the people and talk with them, find out more about them, to develop a relationship, and talk to them about what appointments work for them, what kind of problems they have, so that when they discharge, they have a face and name to go with it. Talk to the insurance companies, and they say, I love that. And they funded us and doubled our rate in order to get it done.
I don't know anything about grants. my approach would be hire somebody who knows grants. Beyond that, I don't know what to say.
Tim, you had mentioned earlier about helping your clients create the next best thing, and I was wondering for each of you, looking forward, what's the next best thing that's percolating in your mind for your own business?
Well, for me, we have established our business so it's generational. So we have people in their 20s working with us. The oldest person working with us is a woman who's 76 years old. She's a lawyer and a PhD. She's from the student affairs profession, and she's our go-to person for overload and referencing. She's also a cancer survivor. So what we do is, as we develop a specialty, and this consultant is in charge of that, then when they develop that, they bring in someone more junior and bring them up to speed. Then they bring in someone more junior and bring them up to speed. So it's a generational approach, so that when I drop dead in the airport, probably the Atlanta airport, the business will sustain itself. So all the people we've had involved who are paying their mortgages will be able to continue paying their mortgages. So that's the succession planning that we do.
Well, I guess two ways to approach that. First is what's the hot topic now? What is everyone funding? What their funding is, the implementation of behavioral health care in physical medicine. That's what the big takeaway from Obamacare is, whatever version of it, and we all know Obamacare was based on Romney's care plan. But anyway, no matter how it's going to work, what has to happen is that we have to do behavioral health care for people with physical illnesses. We're working with people who have asthma, working with kids who have asthma, around changing lifestyle, and an amazing difference on asthma if you can get parents to smoke outside the house. Why it took a while to figure that out, I don't know. But congestive heart failure, working with so many different populations. When you really look at the statistics, the cost that healthcare is absorbing, that really goes back to behavioral care. So somebody has diabetes, obviously their problem is a medical problem, but they have to change their lifestyle. We know how to help people change lifestyle. We learned to do that when we learned how to do recovery from substance abuse. And it's really the same process. If you're going to live a different lifestyle, doesn't matter if it's substance abuse or if it's eating fried foods or if it's maintaining medication regimens. So the big field for the next 10 years is going to be bringing behavioral health care right in primary care's office. It's having relationships with primary care providers and health centers. It's being co-located with them. It's getting projects going that we can reduce emergency visits. Amazing percentage of emergency visits really go back to behavioral health care. And case management. The other part of that, of course, is case management. So that's the big project for the next 10 years in terms of behavioral health care. Having said that, there's stuff we want to do, and sometimes you just got to package it a little differently. I think career counseling is hugely important, and it's really not well supported. There's no national federal funding program that does that. Some states, most states, have federal funds to get people jobs, but they're not really getting people careers. So I know that. And I'm constantly looking for new ways of convincing people that this is medically necessary, which I believe it is. So I just had a new project, a pilot project with our juvenile justice system. And what they're finding is that these kids wind up back in the system because they don't have any careers to think about. And frankly, getting careers for these guys and women is not as easy as it might be. But I've convinced them that this is something that's necessary for them, and I've convinced Medicaid that they should pay for it because it's going to reduce all sorts of things. So sometimes it's really going after what's the hot topic, and sometimes it's knowing what you really want and figuring out a way to twist it enough to fit in.
Well, those are some good ideas. I think I might try to implement some. For me, again, I constantly have, someone has said to me, if you throw 5 balls in the air, you have a good chance of catching one. And that's kind of how I work on planning for the future. I'm always throwing balls in the air. I mentioned to you that we're looking at the possibility of starting another office in Atlanta. And just to show you how we operate, the reason that opened itself up, I have a 9-year-old granddaughter who has Philadelphia positive leukemia, which is a complicated case of leukemia. And she has to go up to Eggleston Children's Hospital on a regular basis. And I go up there with her sometime and spend a week up there with her and reunited with some of the people I know up that way. Started doing some consulting for a couple of large churches who have counseling centers in their churches. Led into some consulting with a couple of psychologists who want to know some business ideas. That led to some opportunities with disability. So that might be the next thing. One of the things that I'm working on that if you have the opportunity, if you can help me with this, it would be very beneficial. We keep trying to hire Dr. Peterson to come up and be our director of training because there is a lack of CEU opportunities in South Georgia unless we come down here. And so we've said, well, let's do that. That's a need. Let's do it. And now who does that well? And so we're always, what I think probably the next best thing, is that how you put it? Is depends on who I find that I really am impressed with. I'll bring them on, and whatever they do, that's what we'll do next. But I like those ideas, and I'm going to start investigating what we need to do to go into what Peter was talking about.
Well, unfortunately, all good things must come to an end, and I think our time is about up. Two things to say. One is that we have lunch available, and it'll be out in the where you came in today, and you can have it there, or take it to go, come back in here and eat. All is fine. The thing I would close with is that what we've really seen today is that entrepreneurship is really a common thread in leadership and innovation. And most of us came into this field because we wanted to make a difference in people's lives. Well, there's ways to do that in terms of working with one client at a time. But I think what our speakers today have shown us is there are ways of making broader contributions. And you do that by leveraging your own energy, your own intellectual capital, your motivation, your ability to take risks, your ability to find out what needs are, and you make things happen on a broader scale. I think what we need to do in our profession is to value the person who wants to be a single practitioner and work in the hospital and have a regular salary, and I think for some of us that's the way to go. But I think for others of us, we need to value entrepreneurship, and we need to value what Dr. Cottingham really did when he founded the department so long ago, which was an entrepreneurial act, to be able to say, I want to create something that is not here now, and my vision is that it will serve people in the future. And the students that are here today obviously are still the beneficiaries of something that really happened many, many years ago. So if you would join with me in thanking our panelists, and have a good one. We don't need a signed release, we just need your verbal permission to use it in classes.
If they go viral.
Thank you.
Yes, it is.
Yes, an entrepreneur, let's talk about
Get your program and one that. I don't know if I have as much wiring in that regard as he does. That's true. I'm working on it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Good luck to you.
Good luck on doing Atlanta as well. I'm from Marietta.
Oh, are you? Well, that's actually the area that we're looking at.
No kidding.
We're looking at Marietta. We've looked at some office space up there, and Kennesaw, Marietta area, you
I
know.
tell you, Marietta is
Yeah,
a
yeah.
base of
You know,
good finances.
Yeah, yeah, it's-
It is a